so I will call the meeting to order. And first up, we have two sets of minutes to approve. First, our regular public meeting of September 12th. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at the minutes? And
And there's Kevin, because I think we need Kevin for these, because I think it was the three of you.
oh, okay. Oh, so Kevin, welcome. I just opened things up about 30 seconds before you joined in. So we're reviewing the minutes of September 12th. And just seeing if anyone has any edits or requested changes. And if not, would somebody like to make a motion to accept them as written?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you very much.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Abstain.
Smith.
Yes. Okay, next up, our meeting from September 23rd, the Chestnut Hill Farm meeting. Again, any requests for changes or edits? And if not, is there a motion to accept them as written?
I only had one little thing. Mike Francis's name was spelled incorrectly. Page 2, last paragraph.
Okay.
In that case, a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Abstain.
Smith.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see, first public hearing. Okay, continued hearing, Central Street. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a continued public hearing on Thursday, October 3rd, 2024 at 7:00 p.m. via a virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a notice of intent for a project located within the Central Street right-of-way for the applicant William Cundiff for the town of Southborough. The project description is to rebuild the retaining wall supporting Central Street and improvements to the road drainage system. Right. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you. I believe the only thing the commission was waiting on was the DEP file number since the last meeting.
Yes, and it looks like the comments of the DEP have been well addressed. And Melissa, do we have anything outstanding on this?
Nope, I didn't send the revised documents to Lucas. I think, there were comments that already came up in terms of the limited project and restoring to existing conditions. And VHB, what they submitted with the photos, was more than ample in my opinion. So yeah, there was nothing else we needed at this point.
Perfect. Questions, comments from the commissioners? Okay, before I forget, if there's anyone here who has joined us this evening from the public who wishes to ask a question or make a comment on this matter, please use the raise hand function and we will bring you up to do that. Okay, not seeing anything. So the next order of business is we need to close the hearing. Would somebody like to make a motion to close?
So moved.
Thank
All
you.
right. I realized I needed second.
And we have a second. Fantastic.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes. Okay, and we have standard conditions on that, nothing special that we added. So we can close this one out right now just by, if someone would like to make a motion to issue a notice in order of conditions with our standard conditions, we can get this wrapped up.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second.
Second.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, you
All
guys
right.
are all set.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Bill. Thanks for
Good to
coming.
see everyone.
You too. Have a great night.
You too.
Okay, 7:05. We are on schedule. Next up, 32 Oregon Road and RDA. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, October 3rd, 2024 at 7:05 p.m. via a virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a request for determination of applicability for a project located at 32 Oregon Road, map 16, lot 10, for the applicants and owners, Brian and Caitlin Talbot. Project description is to enlarge an existing deck and construct an addition. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm here, Stephen Balsa, Chair on behalf of Land Planning, here representing the applicant, Baroli Construction. They're contracted with the owners, I should say. If I may share my screen to just show the plan.
Please do.
All right, can we all see this? All right, so the proposal for the project is to enclose this existing covered porch and add it to the screen porch area that is currently enclosed here. Additionally, there's an existing deck off the northwesterly corner of the dwelling. The applicant and property owner would like to construct an open deck located here. The resource area on site, which puts us in this area, is located here. The associated buffer zones are indicated 20 foot no work and the 100-foot wetland buffer as located here. We are proposing to put sediment barrier and silt fence around the perimeter of the construction area. We are seeking a negative determination to complete this work. I will stop sharing my screen and I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Just a quick one, the erosion control barrier, I heard your microphone's just a little crackly. I heard silt fence and the other element is straw wattles, is that?
Yes, we're gonna propose the straw wattles with the silt fence on the low side of the wattles, I should say.
Questions, comments from the commissioners?
I have just some comments, Ben, if that's okay.
Oh, please, yes, thank you.
So I took a look at this and I actually had the recommendation of pulling in that erosion control line quite a bit, and possibly even using just a straw bottle or compost sock. I checked with the builder, they're only using a small excavator just for the sonotubes, and that would be it. That would be disturbed back there. You know, nothing else is kind of going to be dug or graded or anything like that. So if the commission's okay with kind of a lesser, I think the silt fence might have a little bit more disturbance, ironically, than something like a straw wattle or a sock. But other than that, I had no other comments.
Thank you, Melissa. Did they mention if they're going to be, you said a small excavator, are they going to be using an auger or are they going to excavate with the bucket for the footing, for the?
I think just an auger.
Okay, even better. Okay, anything from the commissioners?
Yeah.
If anyone has joined us here this evening from the public and wishes to ask a question or make a comment on this matter, please use the raise hand function and we will bring you up so that you can do that. Okay, not seeing anyone. Okay. So you're comfortable, I'm guessing, with that condition that the erosion control line limit of work be brought closer to the actual work?
Yes.
How about that the final location be subject to review and approval by Melissa?
I think that would be best at this time, if we're all right with the plans as is and do a pre-construction meeting just to inspect what gets installed.
Yeah, just if you can get in touch with her 72 hours beforehand, work out a location for it. Okay, so we can add that as a condition. With that, if the commission is comfortable, I'm looking for a motion to issue a negative determination of applicability conditioned as discussed.
So moved.
Thank you. And is there a second?
Second?
Thank you.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes. Great. All right, well, listen, thank you very much for coming in this evening.
Yes, thank you for your time. I'll be on in a little bit, so I'll just
Okay, great.
shut my screen down for right now.
See you shortly.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, still on schedule. Next up, we have an ANRAD for 66 Oak Hill. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a continued public hearing on Thursday, October 3rd, 2024 at 7:10 p.m. via a virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation for a project located at 66 Oak Hill Road, map 31, lot 33, for the applicant and owner, Jad Shaheen. Please forgive my pronunciation. The project description is confirmation of resource area boundaries. Good evening, Duchenne.
Dasheng Wang from Creative Land and the Water. We did go to the site with the Lucas, Tom, and so this area is kind of highly disturbed both from vegetation and soils. We did a bunch of soil testings and agreed on adjustment. So do I need to share this?
Let's see, before we do that, how about if we hear from our consultant, Joe Orzel, and if we need clarification by looking at the plan, we can do that.
Good evening.
Good evening, Joe.
As you're probably aware, I was on vacation. Tom Liddy from LE met with Mr. Wang at the site to review the delineation. Tom has since reviewed the revised plans and is in agreement with the location of the wetland as depicted on the plans. I think the only remaining comment that we had in our review was also a comment that was issued by DEP was if there was any further information available regarding the history of the site or the history of fill on the site, that would be good to have included in the information that we have.
Yeah,
You said the history of flow on the site?
The history of fill, the fill.
Phil, excuse me.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Duchenne. I'm sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, so my clients just purchased this house about a year and a half ago. So as far as I can tell, it's very difficult. So we don't have any history passed on to him. He was like, that's just basically his backyard to some degree for the existing house. So it's very flat. It looks like the fill is like a mixed, but it's not like a really mushy place. It's solid. The area is so dense. It's just even hard to auger through. So it's almost like 20 to 24 inches of like in the various of soils, but mostly are very stony soils. It's very so we have no history as far as how this fill happened. It definitely happened far before the current owner. And
Thank you.
there was some, but there's pine trees there, there's a red maple, but the rest of it is just a lawn, so.
Thank you. Melissa, so I recall this coming before us, I'm going to say 6 or 7 years ago, something like that.
Yeah. It was something ironically that Tom reminded me of afterwards because they were looking through the Lucas files and found some photos when Matt and I had been out to the site. So I can confirm it is something that the previous owner has done long ago. I think he's owned the property since the 60s before he sold it just recently. This property, the owner, he had kind of a tractor he liked to put around his yard. He had placed some gravel by this area, so that was removed. And just had been kind of clearing up some leaves and underbrush so that, we told them to stop and the violation was resolved. you know, I think the findings that Tom saw on site, and then are currently are consistent with what Matt and I had seen, you know, X amount of years ago. You know, nothing new has definitely been placed. So yeah, it is something that is extremely historic, at
Yeah.
this point. I think he just used that as a cut through for his tractor. So that's why it probably got compacted, you know, over so many years for so long.
And yeah, you mentioned in your notes a row of boulders. I have this really hazy recollection that we actually asked for that, or something like that, to delineate the area to prevent future encroachments. I could be
I don't
wrong
think
on it, but
so. Yeah, not this one. This one, I think, you know, because I remember going out with Matt and he was talking about how just he had kind of lined it, not quite with boulders, but, you know, smaller rocks,
okay,
just along the edge, you know, to kind of, I think because he was having his tractor going in, so ironically, he was trying to not erode the sides of the little access path. So there wasn't anything immediately concerning, you know, definitely had been done probably decades ago. And I think at the time there had been a neighbor tiff. So that's kind of what it was going back and forth a little bit.
okay, okay. Well, it sounds like in terms of the ANRAD here, we have agreement between the consultant and our consultant on the location of all the flags. Are there any questions, comments, concerns from the commissioners? Okay, I see heads shaking no. There's anyone here this evening from the public who wishes to ask a question or offer a comment, please use the raise hand function and we'll promote you up to do that. And I'm not seeing anyone. So if there's nothing further, then just looking for a motion to issue an order of resource area delineation.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second,
Thank you.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
yes,
Upton,
Yes.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Have a good evening. Okay. All right, we're moving right along here. Next up, notice of intent, 142 Boston Road. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, October 3rd, 2024 at 7:15 p.m. via a virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a notice of intent for a project located at 142 Boston Road, map 58, lot 2A, for the applicant Catherine McKee of the Southborough Trails Committee. The project description is to install and construct a pedestrian boardwalk and footbridge. Good evening, Kat. Welcome. Your mic's off.
Good evening.
There we go. Are you here by yourself or?
No, Beals and Thomas, David
Oh,
Lapointe, and
there we
Andrew
go.
Norman have also joined us. Thank you.
Fantastic. Would you folks like to bring us up to speed and let us know what's going on?
Sure. As Catherine had noted, my name is Dave Lapointe with Beals and Thomas. We're civil engineers, landscape architects, wetland scientists located here in Southborough. And the applicant, the Southborough Trails Committee, is proposing to construct a pedestrian boardwalk across a section of wetland area and then a pedestrian bridge across a stream. The proposed structures would be located on MWRA property, just to the north of Route 30. And we had delineated the wetlands earlier this summer. And the goal of this project is to essentially connect portions of existing trail so that users of the trail do not have to go out onto Route 30. Actually, if there's a chance that I could share my screen just to show you briefly kind of what the situation is there.
Please do.
Okay, hopefully you can see this.
Yes.
This kind of GIS type map. So here is Boston Road, Route 30. The line that's highlighted here in kind of this purple black line is a portion of the Burrows Trail, also referred to as a aqueduct trail. And also possibly further on is part of the Bay Circuit Trail. Kat can probably provide a little bit more detail on that. But the if you can see here, this existing portion of the Burrows Trail on the west side comes down through or along the boundary between Southborough and Framingham. And as you get to the stream, that's the Stony Brook, which is leading from the Sudbury Reservoir, you can see the trail actually directs users out onto Route 30 and have to walk along Route 30 and then go back onto the MWRA property to join up with the trail again to continue on. The problem with that obviously is, unfortunately, you're kind of taking your life in your hands, walking alongside the narrow shoulder of Route 30. And so this project would propose to construct a bridge across the stream portion, as well as then, like I said, a pedestrian boardwalk across a wetland area to provide a more safer route for the pedestrians and avoid walking along Route 30. Let me see, and if I can show you my plan to show a little bit more detail on the wetland areas themselves. So here again, if you can see my screen now, again, Boston Road or Route 30 is shown kind of along the bottom right portion of the window. And there's a wetland area here, which we would have approximately 50-foot long by 6-foot wide pedestrian boardwalk to cross through that wetland area. That would be constructed on helical piles to reduce or minimize the amount of disturbance to the wetland area. And then further along, you can see here's the trail portion that goes through kind of a meadow area and then picks up on this in this window over here, where this is where we would construct the approximately 60-foot long by 6-foot wide pedestrian bridge to get across the stream. And the applicant is proposing to utilize some prefabricated components of the bridge and boardwalk to, again, minimize the need for heavy equipment to get into these areas. Many of the pieces can actually be brought in by hand, all in an effort to, again, reduce the amount of disturbance to these areas. We've also coordinated with MWRA, where they said that they could possibly lower the amount of flow that's going through the stream to aid in the construction if we needed to actually get across the stream channel during construction at any time. They can lower that water level. When I was actually out there just recently, it was very low to the point where you could just walk across it without much trouble, which again, they can control that. We also have submitted a similar notice of intent to the City of Framingham Conservation Commission. As you can see here, the heavier dark line that goes through the kind of the center of this window on the right is the town boundary or the municipal boundary between Southborough on the left side and Framingham on the right side. So some work will be proposed in Framingham as well, and we'll be seeking approval from them as well. That hearing was originally scheduled for last night, but got postponed for a couple of weeks for now. We are proposing to install some erosion control and sedimentation control measures during construction, as well as consisting of silt socks and silt fence, as well as a turbidity curtain or turbidity barrier in the water area adjacent to the boardwalk site. Some of the work will result in some impacts to these wetland areas, but as a result, we are proposing to replicate some of that disturbance. And actually, if I go back to my screen here, so this is a little bit more of a blow up, where again, the boardwalk is to the lower left, the bridge is to the right, And the replication area we're proposing is, it's only slightly less than 50 square feet. But we're proposing that in this area up to the top of the page. The reason why we're putting it over there is this area that's kind of the lighter brown area through the center of this image is a gas line easement. And so we just wanted to try to avoid getting anywhere near any kind of subsurface gas lines. Granted, it's a small area and it'd just be hand tools to create the replication area, but again, just trying to stay away from it as best we could. So at this point, we're requesting an order of conditions for this work, and but obviously open to any questions or anything that you may have.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we've not sent this, Melissa, I seem to recall talking about this over email, but we did not request a review from Lucas. Do you have any updates or additional information for us, Melissa?
So there isn't a DEP number quite yet, but I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more through what your, it is a small area for replication, but how you will be, conducting that, if there's going to be plantings or how, to complete that work.
For the replication area, that was intended to just be, like I said, a small 50 square foot area that'll be excavated along the edge of the wetland boundary, and then will be basically a seed mix will be planted in that area to expand that wetland area.
Do you have the specific spec for the seed mix? I know, I think it just says wetland seed mix. I don't know if you guys use a standard one or if that could be provided.
We can certainly provide it. We typically specify some of the seed mixes from New England wetland plants.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thanks. So unfortunately, I was unable to access the plan through SharePoint. I was getting a 404 error. So this question is probably answered within the plan set, but is there a detailed drawing on the any facet of the wetland replication, the excavation or replacement of loam material or anything like that?
I do not believe that we have a detail of the replication area, no.
Okay.
Well, other than this, just slightly blow up area,
okay.
But not really a detail, no.
Okay. And the replication ratio, do you know off the top of your head? Is it 1-to-1? Is it?
I do not know off the top of my head. Andrew, who I believe is on the call, may be able to provide that answer.
I can find that number in a few moments. But while I'm speaking to that earlier comment, we're really seeing the replication area as a bucket and shovel exercise. It's a very, very small area, and we're going to reseed it with the New England wetland seed mix or whatever the commission finds approvable. I'm just pulling up the form. So we have our temporary impacts reported in the NOI WPA form. And for some reason, I don't have that at my fingertips, but the impacts primarily come from the helical piles. They're going to be driven into the histosol soils. And I'll find this number and then I will unmute and provide it for you.
Okay, thank you. Now, the only reason I asked the question about the how the planting specifically will take place is it can be tricky to get success with a wetland replication area. One thing I've learned through the years is that having an adequate depth of growing media at the correct elevation is critical to having a successful outcome. So I was just curious if there was.
It's only 10 square feet of permanent BVW impact.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Thank you, Melissa. And that is reported on the page 3 of the WPA form. So we certainly have a almost 5-to-1 restoration here, or replication, and we're definitely cognizant of what it takes to get it to work. We're going with the wet mix, particularly for it being a small area, and the wetland to the south of this is a wet meadow, so we're trying to foster that type of growth.
Okay. So, Melissa, just help me with my recollection here. So we typically for wetland restoration that involves actual physical plantings of wetland species, we have an 80% survival requirement after 2 years.
Yep.
For the application of just New England wet mix kind of planting of seed, what have we done? What have we done for that? How have we conditioned that in the past?
So I would still recommend conditioning at least 2 years of monitoring after the replication area has been completed. That's pretty standard just of any replication area. So a report after each growing season and the condition of 2 subsequent years being submitted prior to a request for a COC.
Okay. Comfortable with that condition?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. And have we received a waiver request for the 20-foot no touch?
Yes.
Okay, I would propose as a mitigation for that, first wetland, the wetland replication, and then also that the project is to provide safe public access to an extensive public open space area. We've used that as I think that was our primary mitigation for a Boy Scout project over on the other side of town, thinking back on it. I think with those 2 things, to me would seem adequate mitigation for the 20-foot no touch waiver. That's all I have. Questions, comments, concerns from the commissioners? And
I also confirm, having going out with Kat, you do take your life in your hands a little bit, walking around Route 30.
yeah, it's
Jumping
people fly
guardrails.
through there.
Yeah.
I did have one question. The temporary impacts. Could you explain what they are and why they're temporary? The path maintenance, I think, was.
Exactly. It's just really as a result of the access to get in there with the equipment. Like I said, small equipment, probably a like mini excavator will be utilized, and just the bringing materials in to do the construction. But it would just be the pathway is somewhat basically just kind of a worn path, and presumably even bringing in some small equipment like that in the workers and whatnot probably will not, or we're not anticipating significant impacts at all.
Okay, so it's pathway for the equipment, not for the trail itself. So it's not a permanent thing. It would eventually grow back. Yeah, okay, thanks.
I had a quick question too. Just wonder how long it would take to construct this work, and is this something you're trying to get done before winter, or is there a desired time frame when it's better, a desired season when it's better to do this kind of work in an area that's so wet?
It likely wouldn't be able to be done this calendar year, just because in order for us to get through this approval process, get a contractor on board, and get the structures ordered, that is going to take a number of weeks. But it could end up getting installed or having all that ready to go kind of in the winter of 2025, meaning like maybe February, March, somewhere around there, which that might be potentially beneficial with the ground being a little bit firmer, again, hopefully causing lesser amount of any disturbance.
Thank you.
Ben, I think Kevin does have a good point about the temporary access in terms of where machinery might be coming in, and if there's any stabilization that needs to happen, even though it's kind of that small excavator for the auger, if any, whether it's riprap or whatnot, just so, depending on the trail conditions and how kind of you'll access, and maybe a little bit of phasing, especially as you get to the bridge crossing, where that equipment will head through, essentially.
Yeah, the equipment that we're envisioning would be tracked type equipment, which is a little bit more sensitive kind of footprint, so to speak. And where we would come in probably, actually, I can maybe share my screen again. So we would be coming in to get to the eastern side. This isn't the greatest image, but just hopefully you can envision there's the wetland area over here that we're doing the boardwalk crossing, and then the bridge obviously is across the stream here. We were planning on likely coming in from the Pleasant Street or Framingham side to access the eastern side of the bridge over here, coming from the MWRA parking lot through the meadow area along that easement to access the western side of the bridge and the eastern side of the boardwalk. And then obviously from the driveway of the MWRA property to get to the western side of the boardwalk and western side of that wetland area.
Okay, thank you. See, it doesn't sound like you're going to be stockpiling any kind of fill materials, and you'll only be generating a small amount of spoils from the footings and so forth. So the only stockpiling that'll really take place is more of the bridge components and lumber for the boardwalk. Is that a okay?
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yep.
Okay. Any questions, comments, concerns from anyone who has joined us from the public here this evening? If so, please use the raise hand function and we'll promote you up. It does not look like there is. So unless there's anything else from the commission, I think we are ready to close the public hearing for the, excuse me,
No.
oh, I'm sorry, we don't have a DEP number.
Yes.
My apologies. Just to clarify, we have some special conditions now, a special condition for the replication area. And that's about it. We can wrap the vote in for the waiver when we are doing the closing the hearing next time and voting on conditions.
Yeah, I'll have that drafted for the next meeting.
Okay, yeah, so unfortunately, the only thing that's hanging us up is the DEP number, which should be coming, I would imagine, fairly shortly. So I think we're looking at continuing until our next meeting in 3 weeks, when I'm sure we'll have the number in hand and we can get that all taken care of. So would somebody like to make a motion to continue this to our next public meeting?
So moved.
In a second?
Okay.
Thank you.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton. Sorry, Melinda, I didn't hear you. Upton, you're muted.
Yes.
Beth,
Yes. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming in tonight. And I think at the next meeting, it's going to be a very, very short matter we'll take care of.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great night. Okay. Next up, a notice of intent, excuse me, 116 Main Street. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a continued public hearing on Thursday, October 3rd, 2024 at 7:25 p.m. via a virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a notice of intent for a project located at 116 Main Street, map 52, lot 4, for the applicant and owner, Elizabeth Crowley. The project description is the construction of a garage addition and installation of a Title V compliant septic system. Good evening, Mr. Hazen.
Good evening. How's everyone doing tonight?
Doing well.
I'm not sure if Betsy or Chris Crowley are in the audience anywhere. I heard they might be on tonight. But
The only name I don't recognize is an iPhone 3, so if that's someone, they can raise their hand, but otherwise I don't see them.
okay. All right, so if I might share my screen. Just to bring everyone back up to speed. You see this? What we're proposing is an upgrade to a Title V septic system to replace the existing cesspool that's here. Construction of a garage. Removal of a deck. Construction of a small addition, and then expansion of a patio that runs around, expanding a little bit of the existing patio that's already there. We did receive a letter from Lucas Environmental. We did respond to that. I don't know if they've had a chance to respond back or review our response yet. If not, I could go over the items that
Yeah, my understanding is Lucas received those materials on Tuesday of this week, and they just haven't had the chance to go through them yet. But we'd love to hear where you are on them.
Okay. Yeah, so we've gone through and in regards to the project as a well, I could go right through their letter if you want, and I have there we go.
Through the chair, Joe. I did have a chance to look this over briefly. I don't have formal response, but I could comment on a few things, and maybe those could be addressed a little bit further.
Yeah, that would be great. You know, areas where we have agreement, you know, I think we're
right.
We don't do.
I think most of our comments were I think adequately addressed. I had a couple of questions, I think, remaining on the riverfront area performance standards and the areas. I know we had requested that they provide a description of how the redevelopment standards are met, and also update a table on the site plan. And looking at the table, just quickly reviewing, it looks like the total allowable alteration for the site would be about 5,667 square feet. And they are proposing, including existing, after construction, it'll be about 7,311. So the maximum allowed is 10%. They're at about 12.9%. So some mitigation would be needed. And I think it was noted in our letter that mitigation could take several forms as far as infiltration or possibly some plantings. I know they have proposed some infiltration for some of the impervious area. I don't know the amount of area that is being infiltrated, but maybe that number can be provided. And I think the commission would just need to decide whether the proposed mitigation of infiltration is sufficient enough for the additional almost 3% of alteration.
Joe, just a quick question. You've walked the site.
I have not been on the site. This is walked by Tom Liddy. This was another
okay.
when I was on vacation, so I can't
Gotcha.
comment directly on the site conditions, existing site conditions. I understand if a lot of it is lawn, but I don't know if it's completely lawn or not.
Okay, Mr. Hazen, you may well, this is just in terms of mitigation. I don't know if there are any, a lot of the lots along the aqueduct here have a lot of invasives close to the water. There's potential avenue for some kind of mitigation. I'm not sure if you know the answer to that, whether they're present or not, but it's pretty common for this area. Just thought I'd throw that out there. So thank you very much, Joe. And so, Mr. Hazen, it sounds like that's the big open, that's the open question right now, is the riverfront area mitigation.
Okay, I have not been out there. I know Mark Elbag has. This property is basically lawn right down to the edge of the aqueduct. Part of it's mowed by the MWRA, the other part, the rest of it's mowed by the homeowners. I don't know if there's any invasive species on site. It's something we can look at. We are proposing a 2-foot wide by 2-foot deep stone drip edge on 2 sides of the garage, and also extending along the lower portion of the patio proposed. These are stairs in this area, so we couldn't really put anything in that area. And a small proposed planting area in this area to collect any sort of runoff. We're assuming that the patio's gonna be impervious. If it's gonna be in nature with the other ones, they're real close laid brick. So we wouldn't be able to get any sort of infiltration through that. So that is what we are proposing as far as mitigation, other than upgrading the septic system to something that's compliant with Title V, as opposed to the one that's there now, which is not.
Okay. And the existing septic system is a cesspool, not a cesspit. It's just pumped, and that's.
It's, as far as I know, yeah, it's just I mean, the soils out there are pretty sandy, so
Okay.
it's been able to survive for quite a while. But yeah, it's just some sort of a pit or stone lined, you know.
Okay.
I don't know the age of it, but it's definitely not compliant today.
Okay, and there was no septic tank prior to that, is that correct?
I believe there is an old septic tank in this area.
Oh,
It could
okay, I see
be,
it. Yep.
it's underneath where the proposed garage is going.
Okay.
So that would be pumped out and removed, disposed of in accordance with state and local bylaws.
Okay, questions, comments, and concerns from the commissioners?
I also just looked at some pictures that Tom had sent over. It doesn't look like there are invasives. There might be some along the aqueduct, but that would be on DCR property.
Okay,
It seems pretty much lawn to the edge.
yeah, I was looking at some aerial photos here as we were speaking, and it does appear that it is. Just an idea that I had, worth looking into. Let's see, if anyone has joined us from the public this evening and wishes to ask a question or make a comment, please use the raise hand function so we can promote you up. Okay, looks like nobody has. So I guess for the commission, the topic that we have to address here is the mitigation for the additional, I'm coming up with somewhere around 1,800 square feet of impact within the riverfront area. I see there's a good deal of infiltration. Does not appear to be quantified, but the additional impervious that appears to be targeted for infiltration.
There is 144 cubic feet of storage within the stone drip edge, which we calculated based on the roof area that would be flowing to that, be approximately 3.2 inches of rainfall, which is equivalent to a 2-year storm. It's a little bit more than a 1 inch of runoff, or you know, for the soil, it would be, I think, 0.6 inches of runoff if we went by stormwater management, because I believe it would be a class soil. But that's, like I said, it's the roof is going to be a hip roof, so that we would only be able to collect two sides of it, other than what fell onto the driveway, which would flow eventually to the drip edge, to the channel. So, I mean, we'd pick up essentially the entire garage within this, just by flow, whether it's going around or coming off onto the patio and then into the drip edge.
And it looks like a fair amount of the patio itself will also be intercepted by it to the west of the garage.
Yes, this is
Yeah.
supposed, the should pitch downhill towards the back.
Okay. So the current mitigation scenario we're looking at is the infiltration of stormwater. And I think the upgrading of the septic system, especially with its adjacency to to a public drinking water supply aqueduct, is also, provides some mitigation as well. So the question is, do the commissioners feel that that's adequate? Are they comfortable with it? Is there something else they'd like to see?
Getting rid of that cesspool definitely seems like a big win, right? So,
Oh, yeah, I think it does.
I would also recommend there is a small 60-foot proposed planting area. You can condition that to be a native seed mix or plantings, to be determined, instead of just kind of a maintained landscape bed.
Oh, thank you, Melissa. And it is within the 200-foot riverfront zone too. Mr. Hazen, is that something you'd be comfortable with as a condition?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Melissa can point you towards the UMass list of native plants for the area.
And just a reminder, DCR also requested, and I think at the last meeting we said that the homeowner was okay with removing the dock by hand. That's on the aqueduct that's deteriorating. Just to, I guess, add to it.
Great.
Yeah, a little extra mitigation, but
Yep.
not really
Sure.
within the,
I don't know that we can put that in our conditions because it's off of the property. Well, I guess we can add
Requested
anything.
it, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
I think their only condition was just after it's done to let them know. So I
Okay.
can give you a contact for that.
Okay. So it sounds like there's a general comfort level with the mitigation being proposed. We still, Lucas has not gone through their full review of the response. It sounds like we are absolutely on the right track here, and I suspect our next hearing will be not a lengthy one, but we still do have to complete our process here.
okay,
Um,
fair enough.
Thank you. So with that, is there a motion to continue to our next scheduled public meeting?
So moved.
And a second?
Second,
Thank you.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
yes.
Upton,
yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much for coming in tonight, and
All right, thank you.
see you in 3 weeks.
Okay, sounds good. Take care.
You too. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Next up, notice of intent for 27 Pine Hill Road. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a continued public hearing on Thursday, October 3rd, 2024 at 7:35 p.m. via a virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a notice of intent for a project located at 27 Pine Hill Road, map 79, lot 21, for the applicant and owner Shannon and Timothy Butler. Project description is the construction of an in-ground pool, patio, and pavilion. Welcome
Good
back.
evening again. Yes. As you open, Stephen Balsich here on behalf of Land Planning, Inc., representing the property owner and applicant Tim and Shannon Butler. To summarize the project briefly, I won't show the plans. The proposal to construct a pool is located to the northeasterly corner of an existing dwelling. An alternative analysis has been provided, and I believe Lucas had a chance to review it. We're proposing 3,750 square feet of restoration / renaturalization on the property to account for an excess of alterations within the riverfront zone. There are no alterations proposed to any other resource area or buffer, so principally we're just dealing with the riverfront area. In addition to the pool, a pavilion will be proposed within the patio limits. Since the last time we met, a DEP file number has been issued. I believe it is 290-1128. In their review, 2 comments they had were regarding basically monumentation of the restoration area. Additionally, Lucas Environmental has provided a second review of the project and also requested marking basically this restoration area. At this time, and as previously revised, a stockade fence will be placed at the property line, and it will act as a buffer for the majority of the restoration area. As indicated on the plan, this area is approximately 3,100 square feet. Additionally, to that, there were a few comments regarding the placement of the sediment barrier. The sediment barrier was placed just downslope from the existing proposed work to basically provide a grass filter kind of strip prior to being intercepted by the sediment barrier. We have not moved that since the original submission. Additionally, an invasive species and operation kind of plan was submitted to the commission this afternoon. As we previously discussed, it was basically utilizing the Mass Audubon invasive species manual. It specifies that the restoration area shall be managed by mechanical means as identified in the published document. In the report, we specify that hand pulling of the invasives, girdling as needed, and weed wrenching of any invasives that may migrate into the restoration shall take place. We are not proposing any chemical means or expansion or eradication of invasives outside of this area. Another comment was redevelopment standards, and if it would please the commission, I'd like to kind of briefly run through these, and if required, I'd be happy to make it a condition of approval to supply a document outlining these points. So the first point in the redevelopment was an overall improvement of the existing conditions. As proposed, we are going to be restoring the 100-foot inner riparian zone immediately adjacent and downstream from the proposed patio and pool. Stormwater management. The project as a whole would not otherwise be subject to stormwater management as indicated in the original NOI submission. In general, the stormwater management that was provided is an improvement of the overall watershed ground covers by providing more woodland, that restoration within the 100. Additionally, as far as the infiltration standard, the site is completely made up of C and D type soil. Additionally, there's a lot of, as indicated on the plan, surface ledge. Regarding the water quality standard, we have provided a grass filter between the patio and the 100-foot buffer. In addition, we've also expanded the woodland, further providing better water quality for the watershed boundary. Within the 200-foot river, work shall not be located closer than the existing conditions or 100 feet. As historic imagery is provided, the existing lawn has been the existing lawn for the past 20+ years. The proposal is completely within this area. Regarding the work being closer, we are documenting also compliance with E and F of this section of the Wetland Protection Act. Subsection E is regarding the degraded area on site. As indicated on the site plans, the pre-existing condition is about 2% degraded area. Post is at around 9%. In both cases, we're under the 10% threshold. So no degraded area restoration is proposed or could be proposed because none exists. Regarding subsection G, we are over the threshold for alterations and have provided the restoration area as proposed at a 2-to-1 ratio to account for the excess alterations within the riverfront. Again, if you would like that documented, we'd like to make it a condition of approval, and I'd be happy to provide you with a letter that states these points. In addition to that, and I don't know, Melissa, if you'd be available to let Tim Butler in. He has reached out to the abutter. The last time we had a meeting, the abutter wanted to speak with him. So I don't know if you could let him in to discuss contacting him and what went on during their correspondence.
Sure, he's iPhone 3, so that makes sense now. Hold on one second. He should be loading in.
Good evening, Mr. Butler. Your microphone is off.
All right. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes. Welcome.
Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Sorry, I'm not sure if you guys can hear me, but
we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Shoot.
How's that?
We can hear you great.
Here we go. All right, I got you guys. Yeah, I reached out to Brian Kelly last week. I was able to get his information from Melissa. I just had a brief conversation with him on the phone, invited him over. Pretty much right now we're at the point where, you know, he works full time, I work full time, we have kids. He said he's gonna get back to me so we can come over, see what the proposal is for the pool, where our boundary is, where his property meets. I reached out to him again yesterday, just as a quick text. Hey, you know, just looking to catch up. Are you available? And we said hopefully Friday of next week we'll be able to touch base. So that's where we are right now.
Okay, so you have reached out and are continuing the efforts to have that communication.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If I also may, I spoke with Tim, and he also, through his phone discussion with the abutter, he also reiterated the fact that we will not be thinning out any of the existing vegetation, which the abutter, I believe, was happy to hear. He reiterated that we're just basically preventing the migration or further expansion of this invasives into that area.
Okay, great. Okay, so we do not have an additional official review from Lucas. Is that correct, Melissa?
So the main two things that, and Joe, please feel free to jump in if there's something different, that we had been missing from this, was the standards for the previously developed riverfront, which Stephen just kind of went over, discussion about the encroachment area, a suggestion of erosion controls to be located closer to the limit of the work, and then the invasive species plants, which has not been submitted. So Joe, unless there's something else, most comments had been addressed except for those four.
Yeah, I think the only remaining question I have, and it was a comment by DEP also, I think, was the area these in the southeast corner of the property where a portion of the 100-foot riverfront area is also being mowed. And whether the commission would want that included for renaturalization to reestablish that 100-foot inner riparian zone.
Thank you, Joe. Melissa, I'm sorry, there's one piece of information you said we had not received yet, and I couldn't quite hear what you said.
Oh, I said the invasive species I think had been received.
Oh, it had, okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
I recall the discussion, you're gonna use the Audubon literature for the methodology, so we've received that.
Yep, I didn't send that to Lucas because it was exactly how we had discussed it at the last meeting. So I
Okay.
have that.
So the restoration area, as we discussed in a previous matter this evening, an inspection after each growing season for 2 years, 80% survival rate of all installed plantings is our standard condition on that. You are comfortable with moving the erosion controls closer to the work?
Yes, if that would be preferred by the commission, we would be happy to move it closer to the work.
So typically the way we would handle that is we would ask that you're gonna have to do this anyway for a pre-construction meeting, but contact Melissa 72 hours beforehand so that she can verify that they are placed correctly, or that you can go over the plan of where to place them, and she can offer input and yeah, so that's how we would condition that. Let's see here. Melissa, what am I missing here? Oh, I'm sorry, Joe mentioned the potential renaturalization of the 100-foot inner riparian zone. Mr. Balcevitz, would you mind pulling that plan back up so we can just take a quick look at that area?
Yes. I'm sharing my screen now. Can you see this?
Yes.
All right.
Okay. So that tongue of lawn that extends down to the southeast.
Down in here.
Yes.
Yes. So as of right now, we have provided per the riverfront section of the Wetland Protection Act, in addition to the redevelopment standards, the required restoration area immediately adjacent to the proposed work. Historic aerial photos show that this area down here has been monumented with a fence and has always been a grass area. And we have provided through this area the minimum required for the alteration excess. So we have not provided anything regarding this. As far as renaturalization, we would like to continue to use it as it was historically used prior to this property owner.
Thank you. Questions, comments, concerns from the commissioners? Okay, before I forget, if there's anyone here from the public who has joined us this evening who wishes to ask a question or make a comment on this matter, please use the raise hand function of Zoom and we'll promote you up. Okay, it looks like there is not. So Melissa, I think we've covered our special conditions.
Yeah, the only other one I would recommend adding is about if invasive removal is to commence, the commission should be notified and that written permission submitted, because it would be on an adjacent property.
Thank you very much. Acceptable, Mr. Belzovich?
Yes, yes.
If there are no more questions or concerns from the commission, I think we're now at a point where we would close the hearing. If somebody would like to make that motion.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
I'm in
Second.
Oh, you got me.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Beth.
Yes. Okay, so, we've just gone through all of the special conditions, so we would be in a position right now just to vote to issue an order of conditions, conditioned as discussed. If somebody would like to make that motion,
So moved.
thank you, and a second,
Second.
thank you,
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Beth.
yes. Okay,
All right.
I'll probably get this to you tomorrow, probably around before 11.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you all for your time.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, another notice of intent that it looks like will be continued. Just got to open it up here. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a continued public hearing on Thursday, October 3rd, 2024 at 7:45 p.m. via a virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a notice of intent for a project located at 120 Turnpike Road, map 37, lot 120-4, for the applicant FD 120 Turnpike LLC. The project description is the construction of a 60-unit apartment building. I understand the applicant has requested a continuance to our next public meeting on the 24th of October. So all we need is just a motion to continue until then.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
And there's a second.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Beth.
Yes. Okay. On to new and continued business. 2 East Main. I see Peter has joined us in the audience.
Yep, he's loading in.
Okay. Good evening, Peter.
Hi, sorry. Oh, there we go. So I don't have much to say as far as progress, other than that I did get away to North Carolina as I had planned and accomplish what my goals were there. I did say to Melissa today that I was, sorry to disappoint her further, but she's the last person on the planet I want to disappoint, or the commission. And you folks have been very cooperative over the years. So we will make some progress between now and your next meeting. That much I can assure you. I do plan on moving some of this over to my son's property on Sears Road, and as you know, before I left for North Carolina, the gas company was occupying much of the property. So they have since moved out. They cleaned up, from what I'm told. I didn't see it personally, but I'm trying to help out when I can, and then not be a nuisance when I'm not trying to be. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm sorry that it's not done yet, but I can assure you that we can make some progress between now and the next meeting. Hope you'll find that acceptable, and otherwise you can punish me.
I certainly understand the delay with all the work the gas company was doing. All of our little downtown was tied in a knot for close to 3 weeks, is my recollection.
Right.
It was kind of a mess down there. It sounds like you are committing to get some substantial work done in the ensuing 3 weeks. I'm generally comfortable with that. How do other folks feel?
It sounds like a good plan to have a progress report in 3 weeks.
Thank you.
Yeah. My interest is getting it fixed, not punishing Peter. That's so.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough.
Okay, yeah, so Peter, thanks for coming in and
Okay.
giving us the update, and we look forward to hearing some good news in 3 weeks.
Okay, and if the gas company shows up again, I'll just have to tell them, look, I'm sorry. You got away with it once, you can't get away with it twice. All right, take care, folks, and
You too.
enjoy the evening. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Melissa, it sounds like we have some communication taking place anyhow on 34 Sears Road.
Yes, and I believe there's someone here to speak about it, so let me move them up. Shannon. She's loading in as a panelist.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thanks. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. I guess, do you want me to start or?
Yes, please. Yeah, if you, it
I'll
sounds
introduce
like,
myself.
yeah, it sounds like Melissa had reached out, and we're glad to hear that communication has been established. So if you could let us know where we are with this, that would be great.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. So for the record, I'm Shannon Boyce. I am the real estate permitting manager for Capital Group Properties, which is the managing agent for 34 Sears Road Realty Trust. As to the violation, what I had sent to Melissa was we believe that the statute of repose limits the commission's enforcement authority against 34 Sears Road Realty Trust because when an individual acquires a property with pre-existing wetland violations, the commission has a 3-year period based on the statute of repose of which they can enforce against the violation. I sent to Melissa, the deed was recorded in 2013, so that was 11 years ago. As to the violation, I'm still doing a little research on this, and it's been about 20 years, I think. So people have, gotten old, passed away, et cetera, et cetera. But what I've found is, and what the previous owner was saying, is that he believes this work was done under the agricultural exemption to the act. So basically that property is used for haying, and the heavy equipment after rains would get stuck in the entryway to the property. And so he was not able to hay after a decent heavy rain. So he told me that a previous commission member, Philip Mock, had come out to the property when he was initially doing the repair. He also came back out during the repair and did another kind of walkthrough at the property with him in a discussion about it. And then after the repair was finalized, he came out that last final time. No RDA was submitted because under the agricultural exemption, it's not required. It's, suggested but not required. And no NOI was submitted because they determined it was work that fell under the agricultural exemption. So this is what I'm being told. And to this day, that property is still used for haying. So it is still used for agricultural purposes. If this work was not done, the owner believes that they could not have continued farming the property because the heavy equipment kept getting stuck and there was no other entryway for them to bring the heavy equipment in to do their haying. So that's where we're at with that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The haying on the property, is this is there some sort of commercial arrangement with a farmer or?
Yes, yeah, they have a commercial arrangement with a farmer who hays the property, and the hay then is used for, I guess, cow feed over at a dairy.
Okay, and so there would be a history of some, even if it's $1 a year, or whatever the arrangement is, there's some sort of documentation that it's been in a commercial agricultural use?
I'm told that there is, yes.
Okay.
I did ask, because I did say that that's kind of an important part of the equation.
Right,
So.
right, okay. So, Melissa, where are you, you've been doing all of the legwork on this. Where are you at with this?
I did confirm that the property was sold kind of back to the trustee in 2013. These were kind of originally sold off in, I think, 1995. So that's where the individual lots were created. This property I did find out has a use restriction in terms that can't have any structures over 3 feet. So, that's kind of where it's at. In terms of an agricultural exemption, the commercial use is one, but typically if you're altering a resource area, that doesn't necessarily automatically exempt you from doing so just from agriculture. But I guess it's up to the commission, if we acknowledge kind of that 3-year statute, I think we just need to take into consideration, what's being done next door and how we can help to seamlessly flow that in if nothing is done on this property.
Okay.
And there is no plan to convey that property, just to let you know, so.
Okay. Yeah, the last piece that Melissa mentioned, was that geez, Melissa, how did we leave it with the new owner of that adjacent property? How were they going to terminate that pipe at the property line? Were they going to put on a flared end or something like that? Or a riprap?
Riprap. Yeah.
Okay. Is that what you're talking about, addressing the transition? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So, I think the new homeowners, would be amenable if there's something else that needs to be done. If, we
Yeah.
have an understanding that nothing is going to happen. As of right now, it's not causing any erosional issues. The new owners have been on top of the 20 Sears portion.
I had forgotten about that, that 3-year limitation, honestly. Just completely escapes me. Just to sort of complete things on our end, and give us comfort that, that the best course of action here is just not to really do anything. Melissa, I think it would be helpful to get some documentation of the actual agricultural use, and that will give us, I think, the confidence that we need. Janet, is that something that
Yep.
Okay,
Yep, definitely. I'll speak with them tomorrow.
great.
And Shannon, do you know what time the previous commissioner might have went out? Because I was checking minutes around 2005, 2006 and didn't see it referenced, but that's not
No.
necessarily unusual, but.
Yeah, the owner who had initiated and made the repair, he said it's been a while. He's rather elderly at this point, but he said what happened was he was starting the repair and Philip Mock actually drove by and saw the big pipe in his driveway and pulled over and said, "Hey, what's going on?" And so that's how it all started, and that's why he initially walked the property with him. The owner discussed with him the issue the farmer was having, and that was the whole initial discussion before the project even broke ground. So, that there was the owner didn't initially reach out. It was more that Philip Mock happened to pass by while he saw the pipe on the driveway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even if you can figure out a year.
Yeah, he could not. He said, when I told him your letter said around 2006, he said that sounds about right.
Okay.
He couldn't. He said it had been so long.
We have a disgusting amount of handwritten notes, so I'll go double check those too.
So, questions, comments from commissioners? Okay. Yeah, so it sounds like, Kevin, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I guess one question is it worth running this by town council just to get his opinion on the 3-year, or is it pretty clear? I didn't personally go and look it up myself, so.
Oh, it's pretty settled.
Melissa,
SBC spoke to it.
is that,
That's doable. I can talk to town council.
okay, I was gonna ask if you are confident that this 3-year limitation applies here. I'm certainly comfortable with your expertise in the matter. But if it would be helpful to contact Jake, then we ought to do it. Okay,
I'm sure he can have a quick response to this if that's the case.
perfect. Okay, I have a feeling that this is a pretty easy resolution here. So we will keep this on the agenda for next week, and there's every reason to suspect that we'll talk about it very quickly and get it all wrapped up.
Great. Okay, so same time next week, thereabouts?
Or- Sorry,
It's,
next week
well,
in 3
we meet every 3 weeks.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah. So our next meeting, I believe it's October 24. And I don't think it'll be a particularly lengthy conversation. So,
Yeah, Laura will send you another email the week of, just like she did this time, so we can get a better understanding of time.
Okay, thanks, Melissa.
all right. Well, thank you very much for coming in this evening.
Thanks for
and,
having me.
Probably see you in 3 weeks.
Okay, see you then. Thanks.
Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along. Potential violation, 1 Boston Road, that small area of potential filling or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And before we move, I don't know if we want to relieve Joe of his duties tonight. I don't think we really have anything else we need him for.
Yeah, I think we're good to go, Joe.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone have a good night.
You too.
You too. All right, so for 1 Boston, this is the Lamy Insurance Building. So I did speak with the owner of the property, and essentially what was done, if you look at some of the Google Street Views, or if you're familiar with the area, they had their Lamy Insurance sign, kind of a landscaping bed and some bushes that are there. So what they did is essentially take that out and extend their parking area, not necessarily paving it, but just kind of grading it out and putting some, I don't know if they necessarily put gravel down or if it's just kind of the hard packed dirt. I would say they didn't expand the area any in terms of vegetation clearing. The area has always historically been grass, at least since from the early 2000s. And looking at some of the street views, you could tell they kind of used it as a little bit of a turnaround and unofficial kind of parking spot. So, you know, they said that they kept the same grade, you know, they didn't bring anything in, they didn't take anything out, just smoothed it down after removing that sign and landscaping bed and bushes. I guess the reasoning for doing so is they stated they had 2 parking spaces removed when the town did some of the downtown work. So they need to put those elsewhere on the property. And this was the most, you know, amenable location for them. So I wanted to get the commission's, you know, thought. I did take, you know, another stop by since the last meeting after talking with the homeowner. There's been, you know, nothing has been pushed over the side. There didn't seem to be any, you know, erosion or sedimentation issues. You know, but it is going to be an area that will have cars parked in it in the future, and it is a little bit of a change of use from, you know, vegetated to what will most likely eventually become impervious from compaction from driving. So that's kind of where it is. Want to get some input from the commission if there's anything you wanted to see. If this was, you know, more of an educational, you know, see where it kind of takes us. You know, I think I'm worried about, now that I thought about it a little bit more, kind of the ongoing use of it for parking, especially in an area that doesn't have any, you know, stormwater or things like that.
Geez, I mean, it's a change that would certainly be, you know, we could find a way with some mitigation to permit it from a notice of intent or potentially even an RDA. If somebody approached you, Melissa, and asked, how do I go forward to do this work? I think you probably would have suggested probably an NOI, I would guess, yes?
Yeah, you know, especially with it being commercial, I think, you know, I kind of flip-flop back and forth. You know, with them, I think the majority of the work was just because they had to remove like a more permanent, like, block landscape and sign, you know, that kind of created the most disturbance, which was pretty much in the middle of the site, you know, that wasn't on the edge. So just kind of that work allowed them to kind of scrape out and the surface. You know, in that front, you know, it kind of made sense for an RDA, you know, but
Yeah.
then you kind of think of the change of, you know, just vegetated to parking, not full parking lot, but an area that will most likely have 2 parking spots.
So I'm just looking at the street view on Google, and interestingly, there is a catch basin in the gutter line of Boston Road, sort of immediately in front of this area. Actually, am I able to share my screen, Melissa?
You should, yep.
Uh,
Oh, there is.
all right, is that showing?
Yep.
Yeah, so you can see that the catch basin right there. So the idea that occurs to me is that any grading, regrading that's done to support the parking use, if it pitches backwards towards the gutter line, the drainage will at least be handled by a catch basin where we have some hope of capturing any kind of sediment that leaves the site.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
And if you were to go a little bit to the left, you can tell that they use that already as a parking area. There's, kind of a horseshoe
Yeah,
already imprinted into it, so that's kind of where it's like kind of already was utilized for this use, and it was more just the scraping that they had to do for where the sign is
right.
that made it look so scary, I guess.
Okay. But, I mean, is it your feeling this is something that we should just, use an educational opportunity and something to keep an eye on as we drive past it?
I think so. I mean, I hate to say it doesn't need, I think if they were to come to me, it would have been something that I would have required a permit for. It's something I think we can memorialize in a memo to the homeowner if that's something the commission is open to, talking about, if we notice that the intended use of this area is becoming problematic, to the resource areas, then it's something that the commission reserves the right, to discuss again, and follow up with some education, which I did kind of over the phone. And he was very minimal. He was very friendly, just kind of talking it through. So I think they definitely weren't trying to do something that they thought didn't need it, because the goal was really just to kind of move those shrubs, landscaping kind of shrubs, not, really do improvements per se.
Okay. How does everyone feel about that approach?
I think it's a great educational opportunity. I think that there's sort of a history in that property where it is a fairly heavy traffic area, and I think there needs to be sensitivity to the overall environment. But I think for this particular situation, this is a good opportunity to make sure they understand that going forward, they didn't do it the right way.
Thank you. And,
Is it pointless to go through the application process, the permit now, either for an RDA or NOI? I mean, just to get the paperwork in place and.
I'd say nothing is pointless. If the commission would like a permit, I think an RDA at the end of the day would probably suffice for this. There's no real plans, I guess, that go along with it, but we can put together pictures, etc.
okay. Yeah, I'm trying to, so it sounds like you say that it has been used in the past, maybe infrequently, but for some sort of parking or vehicular use. But it's just much more open now with the relocation of those features.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think it has more of an intention to become 2 parking spots at least now. I think there's a Pilates or a yoga studio or something going in on that unit on the left.
I'm on the fence. Liz, you're the deciding vote.
Sounds good to me. I mean, I think I'm open. either way I mean, is there a standard practice that we usually do here, or is this really is this really this?
Yeah, it's really this. We
Yeah,
usually do application or, I think if you guys are amenable to kind of having the expanded letter, having that educational, but kind of reserving our rights to keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
That definitely doesn't hurt. And if down the road it needs more of a formal application, this decision doesn't take away from that authority as well.
Sure. Okay, I think I'm more comfortable with that.
okay. And yeah, maybe in the letter, like, mentioning sort of specific what the kind of impacts we'd be looking for, erosion and sedimentation towards a resource area, and that sort of thing, so that they, they're aware of what we'll be looking for as we're driving past.
And what if they do want to mention, further work in there, if you put down
Oh.
gravel or pavement or anything, you need to come back to us at that point.
Yeah. Excellent point, Kevin. Okay.
All right.
All right, next up, okay, I was confused here. I saw 120 Turnpike again. We have to submit our comments to ZBA.
Yeah, I think we're at a point where the newest plans that were submitted to ZBA, not to us yet. I think it's a good point to have at least some comments, and I know I put together quite a few, and I hate to not bore you with them, but they're sometimes a little bit technical. So one thing was when I was going through the most recent application, there was a lot of kind of conflicting information between the waivers, requests, and determination of resource areas versus when they decided to make it a resource area versus not. So there was one comment that our peer reviewer picked, or the ZBA's peer reviewer picked out, that was kind of refuted in one of the, I think, response comments or the waiver list about the pond being a detention basin and not a resource area. So it's something that we have very often recently, it seems, confirmed. This system was designed, installed, etc. prior to 1996. There's been no improvements to it to meet the stormwater standards, so it does qualify as a wetland resource area. So that's kind of my first and second comment, a little bit, stating that because it's a jurisdictional wetland resource area, the stormwater standards need to be met prior to discharge and not utilized as the stormwater to obtain compliance. So taking those.
Can I just jump in? So prior to discharge into the pond, not discharge from the pond, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And they can't be used to obtain compliance.
Right.
Which is something we discussed even as recently as 250 Turnpike.
Yeah.
Just kind of a statement that they've submitted our NOI to us about 6 months ago now. Plans have drastically changed. So we really haven't had a chance to review any current application with our state and or local regulations. I also pulled out from their waiver list that they're only requesting the waiver from the 20-foot no touch. Therefore everything else should comply with our wetland regulations, which includes adding 20 and 100-foot buffer zones to all the resource areas, including the pond.
And also that would include our adoption of NOAA 14 as the basis for rainfall amounts.
Correct, which they did include. I was happy to see that. So that has already been addressed. Just kind of a very stickler comment about one of their stormwater checklist on standard 7. They only hit redevelopment and not a mix of new and redevelopment. So that's very important. Just kind of a statement about this project being within an outstanding resource water, and they shall be removed and set back as far from the receiving water as possible. There is a discharge that's pretty much right at the end of the current pond, which the ZBA peer reviewer called out as well. So I wanted to reiterate that. Some things about illicit discharge statements, that they say they want to submit afterwards. It is something that we require to be submitted as part of our application. So I've included that. That's within their SWIP or their stormwater pollution prevention plan. There was some inconsistencies within their operation maintenance plan. There was things that just kind of stopped mid-sentence. They talked about the watering of lawns, yet they're requesting a waiver from irrigation. So wanted to advise on that. The construction period OM ironically doesn't talk about erosion controls whatsoever. Talks about catch basins and things like that, but not the actual silt fence or similar. I kind of reiterated our ongoing condition that we've told them about in a previous approval for the construction of the project. They did put in their post O&M, seemingly the same language, but just wanting to reiterate that as well. They did not have a proposed construction entrance at the site, to the portion of the site that's undeveloped. That's basically the hill. So looking for some sort of stabilized construction entrance as they go up that area, because of the slope especially, but also to make sure that they're not tracking out dirt and sediment, into existing stormwater infrastructure as well. And then a lot of comments about the parcel that's to be donated to us, which they call Lot 4C. Stating that this lot was supposed to be donated in its natural state as open space, but the current plan calls for vegetation clearing, grading, and installation of a stonage drainage swale on the property that's to be donated to the town. That drainage swale also does not come up in the post-construction O&M whatsoever and would be on town property. So asking what the plan for maintenance is, and if this requires some sort of easement or access for maintenance. I did put in here that I wanted the commission to, make sure it was okay if you wanted some different language or to delete this altogether, about objecting to the presence of improvements or destruction of the native state on this lot. I don't know if you wanted to be that strict, or if you just wanted
I think this is one I'd love to understand it better, because it sounds like they may have to change the height of the land up at the top. And I'm not sure if that means clearing trees to do so.
Yes.
On the land that then would eventually be donated to our town. So I don't know if you have a better feel for what is entailed with that, Melissa.
Yeah, so there is, within what is the current property boundaries of the land that is to be donated to the town, the current limit of work includes an area of grading and the swale, which would include removal of vegetation and, excavation to some limit. So there would be kind of a alteration of that area from its native state to part of it will be a stormwater feature. That is then donated to the town. So all of a sudden we have a riprap swale on our property and grading that wasn't there before on our property. Does that
Is
answer?
there a plan for replacement vegetation?
So there is, and I do have, and a little bit later, they do have some of proposed landscaping like trees and shrubs along the edge of the playground, which is also on the property that's to be donated to the town. So whose responsibility for maintenance is that as well, which I did put in a comment just a little bit later on. So it's kind of, but that's the only, I think there's 47, I think, trees and shrubs that are proposed on the parcel to be donated to the town, but unclear of what the maintenance requirements are, or if they, need to survive, who's maintaining those. So that's kind of unclear at this point.
I know stewardship had a lot of these same concerns about the grading onto the conservation land, and
I will say that I am comfortable with the language in letter D here.
Sure. Any
So
objections?
Is,
to that?
if we, are we allowed to just say we object to it? Do we have to say anything further?
No, I mean, I think that's kind of, yeah, I mean, we object to the presence of improvements or destruction of the native state. I think that's kind of just what we're getting to.
Is it feasible to complete the project without making what the word improvements means?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I was getting to in E, you know, saying the commission suggests that the ZBA discuss if the presence of improvements and permanent stormwater features on open space to be donated to the commission is appropriate. I can add, you know, or to determine if work can be done, you know, off the lot to be donated to the town. Or if the project can be completed without alteration to lot 4C.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have any enforcement authority on this stuff. This is just our, you know, our opinion on the project at this point.
Well, I do think a lot about us now having land that has a dump on it, that the town is responsible for cleaning up. And I'm imagining that this is a situation where we would have potentially land donated to the town that has some features that require maintenance.
Correct. And no call out of them in any of the post-construction operation and maintenance plans. So it's kind of concerning to me, you know, of like, okay, well, they're installed, but what do they really do if they're never going to be maintained? It shouldn't be our responsibility to maintain compliance for someone else's project.
So speaking of the dump, I know the planning board originally had a condition in there that they do an assessment for environmental hazards on the property that gets donated to the town, so we don't inherit another problem. I don't know if we want to mention that somewhere in here.
It may well have already been done with the property. I don't know if the property transfer has already taken place, but commercial property transfer, they always have to do a 21E site assessment that would turn up environmental risks like that.
Yeah, we could, I don't know if we need to include it because it is required per the site plans, but I can add that in there at the, I could do it at the top where we talk about the major site plan, or, you know, it is, I think as Ben said, it is something that's legally required either way.
Those are public record, is that correct, Melissa? 21E filings?
I don't know, I would assume so.
Yeah, I'm going just on the assumption, yeah.
Yeah.
I've never looked one up before, so I don't.
Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, my understanding is that hasn't been done yet because the property is, you know, there, I think the conveyance would be after the 40B permit was issued.
Sure, yeah.
And assumingly all the work is done, because otherwise they'd be working on town property. Okay. So another issue in reading some of the pollution prevention plan, it again talks about a temporary settling basin down gradient of the work. And it's not shown on the plans and seems to be, it would be right next to the pond. So that's a little bit concerning. So I asked it to be shown on the plan in an appropriate location. Requesting all references to hay be removed and replaced with straw as hay is prohibited. For some reason, I think they previously had stockpile locations on the plan, but they're since gone. So reiterating that stockpile location should be on the plan. It also kind of has this general narrative about potential BMPs that may be employed. So, you know, requesting that if the other BMPs are utilized in other the plan, that the commission and or the ZBA be notified of the change so that we can ensure they're appropriate. Just finding the company, the engineering company has changed names, so there's kind of conflicting references to the old company. Just a pet peeve item, I guess. Also talks about a diversion swale to be placed above abutting properties or Rice Road, which clearly doesn't exist. I think it's a copy and paste error. And the diversion swale, according to this, would be also on town property. There is a snow stockpile location right next to the pond. So recommending that that location be changed to a more appropriate one would be required during NOI. And then I'd really get into about the stabilization of the slope for where the playground and the, you know, essentially the leaching field will be. Because there's really, you know, it kind of states that everything's going to be done in one phase. But in reality, you know, there's no real understanding of this is going to be the only area that is kind of new development, and that will be really unstable sediment and slopes and clearing of trees. So it kind of talks about how they're going to clear and grub and then do all this work. But, you know, if they're not actually going to be working in that area, you know, until after the completion of the project, that really shouldn't be altered until, you know, such time that they get there. So asking more information on how the slope will be accessed. Wanted a confirmation that there's going to be no lighting in the area of the dog park and playground. That seemed a little interesting because it is such a steep slope. I would think they would have some sort of lighting for safety. So wanting to confirm that. And the planting plan and the landscaping notes called for a bunch of different seed mixes, but there's no areas of where they're actually going to be applied. So calling for some clarification on that. And this is where I talked about those 47 trees and shrubs are proposed to be plantings on the outskirts of where the current playground is proposed. And they appear to be on the lot that will be donated to the town. So suggesting if these are required to be maintained in perpetuity and if that location is appropriate since the property will not be owned by the applicant.
Well, I would just pause and ask, is 47 the right number? How did they arrive at that number? Is that going to be enough?
Yes, that's at least what I counted. So it's not to say that this is the entirety of the plantings on the project. These are just the number of plantings that are on the lot. But you wanted to add one if that is enough for screening. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'll pretty that up a little bit more though. And then again, that the project states that it will be done in one phase. Because if work isn't happening, you know, on that slope, then it shouldn't be cleared or grubbed until such time that that work is ready to commence. That's my long-winded notes.
That's fantastic. So,
Fun-filled afternoon.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, no, thanks, Melissa. I read through this and the other one that you drafted. I thought both were super helpful in me to just kind of understand what's going on as well. So thank you for doing it.
Yeah, you know, I will admit the plans are sometimes difficult to read. There's a lot of lines, there's a lot of layers. You know, I'm hopeful that the peer review for ZBA will continue to, you know, kind of catch out some of these. I know a lot has just been on the waiver aspect and finally getting into the actual components of it. So if you guys are okay with this, I think I'd like to send this to the ZBA since they're meeting next week, so that they can have our comments for discussion or follow-up as needed. Except for the prettying up of this one.
One question, I got sidetracked completely on the the interlocking concrete paver things that they're using for permeability. Have we done projects that use those in the past, and are we,
Yes.
okay,
Um,
and they work well, and we're comfortable that it'll get the results that they're promising?
As long as they follow what they've listed in their O&M about street sweeping, that's usually the biggest issue, is that they can fill with sand, you know, through just normal wear and tear or for winter activities. So as long as they're adequately maintained, like anything else, you know, it has its caveats, but they are something that do work.
they do. There's some installed, oh gosh, what are they called now? It used to be Red Barn Coffee Roasters. Now it's New York Bagels, I think. That complex where Sperry's is on the other end, there's a row of parking where those were installed, gosh, 15 years ago. And they still function. If they didn't, the water would pool up over them. So they've been effective for what that's worth.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so, you know, our comments to ZBA, of course, are not binding in any way, but just to help them with their decision. But this does not affect in any way our authority under the Wetlands Protection Act. So we will certainly be seeing a notice of intent for that.
And Ben, I do just want to note there's a hand up. I think they had a comment about this. I don't know if you wanted to take public comment.
Didn't even see it. Yes, please.
That's fine. Oh, you should be able to unmute.
Hi, my name is Paul Carter, and I've been following the 40B, and I've commented on various stages of the ZBA and the planning board's review. I'd like to address a couple things. The main thing I'd like to address is that they are showing screening between and vegetation between the dog park and the playground and the slope that goes right to the facility, but they aren't showing the corner right where there's a garage and the most eastern corner of the building. There is very close to the existing trail, and my whole interest in this is that I've been using that trail for over 20 years. It's an integral part of Breakneck Hill conservation. It allows you to do a big loop. So we were just fortunate enough to find that the 6.2 acres had been committed to the town. If that wasn't the case, the building, what they're proposing, a 5-story building, would be still back up on the top of the hill, and with significant impact visually, particularly to that portion of the Breakneck Hill conservation land. So my initial comment relative to the Concom's comment is that the proposed screening is inadequate at that eastern corner because it's right on the trail. My second comment is the slope for the septic area being on the donated land. They should be able to use a retaining wall instead of that slope. They are using retaining walls elsewhere. It is on the cut side. There's a 60-foot elevation difference between the top of this property and the parking lot now. So creating that plateau for the septic area does require a fair amount of grading. I mean, as far as those are my two main comments at this point. There are other comments. There's things where this is deficient. They don't have a subdivision. These are things that the planning board of the ZBA still hasn't fully addressed. Their plan doesn't show any frontage, not even 20 feet. And the applicant has been reluctant to being proactive to some of these kinds of issues. The main thing, the other thing I'd say is that I hope that they do submit a notice of intent. You know, they got a lot of work in buffer zone. I'm not sure that they realize that. I mean, they may take this letter as the Concom's review. And you know that 40B allows them to bypass planning board, but it doesn't allow them to bypass Conservation Commission. So the commission has power over this project that the planning board does not. I guess any concerns the commission has about this donated land with Breakneck Hill being owned by the Conservation Commission and managed by the Conservation Commission would be helpful in terms of ending up with a good project here. The other thing, they're proposing a 5-story building. Now, once again, this isn't within the Concom's purview, but from a visual point of view, from the conservation land, it makes a difference because you're going to see it more. So I would say the last thing I'll say is that, well, 2 things. One is I'm an engineer. I've done transportation and land development and peer review for 40 years. And I know what a looking development plan looks like. And the plan should be much clearer, as Melissa has stated. They're very hard to read. And it's very confusing. The last thing I'll say, the second to last thing I'll say is that for the infiltration pavers, they're good for dealing with the first flush. They do have to be vacuumed, not just swept. And they don't address peak runoff, you know, because infiltration is so much slower than the kind of heavy, intense rainfalls. And the last, I'll say, you know, why I'm involved is because the Breakneck Hill conservation land is just about my favorite place on earth. So those are my comments. Little context. I know you guys probably haven't been following the ZBA and the planning board and such. There is big progress that the building was moved down off of the side of the hill.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Carter. A couple of things. This developer will absolutely have to submit a notice of intent to the Conservation Commission. As you point out, I guess they could interpret this list of comments as our review, but of course, our review under the Wetlands Protection Act will be it will be a de novo review. We'll be looking at the project in a great deal more depth. We pointed out that the plan doesn't contain the kind of detail that you would expect. Plans that are submitted accompanying a notice of intent are going to have to contain an awful lot more detail. The fact is 40B does not require a great deal of detail on plans. The plans that get submitted to a zoning board of appeals are conceptual. And it's only after the comprehensive permit is issued that a developer puts together the detailed plans for whatever regulations or bylaws still apply. I'm not saying I'm happy with that situation, but it's just a fact of the way the process works. And your point is well taken on the performance of the pavers. They are only for infiltration. That does take place during the first flush of a storm. Peak flow mitigation is going to have to be handled through conventional stormwater detention type of techniques. But this all will be looked at in a great deal of detail at the time when a notice of intent and a detailed plan set is submitted to the commission.
And
Yeah,
I
so-
also, just to clarify, number 3 in the comment letter, I also did state that we have not had the opportunity to fully review the current project in compliance with state and local regs, so it is in there.
Yeah. So our jurisdiction under the Wetlands Protection Act is it's absolute, that cannot be waived by the zoning board of appeals in this particular matter. So okay, if there's nothing further from the commission or the public on this comp permit, we've got another one.
Yay. All right, I'll go through this one pretty quickly because it is really just the bare minimum of the plans. So, essentially this is 352 Turnpike. So we got the letter from Mass Housing stating that they have submitted for their comprehensive permit. Just some kind of overview things about, there's a wetland to the north that should have buffer zones listed on it. It's off-site, but still has a buffer zone that affects this project. There is some inconsistencies between the plan sheets, talking about an existing detention basin versus on the next sheet, it calls it a wetland resource area. So kind of the same as we discussed in the previous comment letter, it qualifies as a wetland resource. It was installed and designed prior to 1996, even prior to 1988. Therefore is jurisdictional and has the applicable buffer zones. And again, the stormwater standards need to be met prior to the discharge to the wetland resource areas for new development and or to the maximum extent practical allowed for redevelopment. And kind of just saying things that we would require in an NOI, such as the location of all existing and proposed infrastructure, including kind of the culvert connections between the existing resource areas, a completed and stamped stormwater management checklist and stormwater report. Because the project plans also have a restaurant proposed on them as part of the 40B application, I added in a suggestion to demonstrate which aspects are necessary and directly related to the construction of the 40B portion, as kind of we've gone through with other projects such as Park Central. One thing that I did kind of very notice, because they just have basic outlines that state subsurface infiltration units. They do appear, to be very close to the wetland resource areas, but also, require pretreatment for those subsurface. Unclear of what they may be, and that would be required in the NOI. The suggestion of doing test pits, which would be required for the NOI. Those infiltration BMPs look like they are closer than 50 feet from the edge of the wetland, which they are required to be at least a minimum from. So ensuring that they do that. Erosion control plan shall be necessary for the NOI. Within the NOI, we'll be requesting that the number of square foot of existing versus proposed disturbance and also impervious surfaces for the site, location of stockpiles, snow storage, and suggestion that plantings be straight natives only within buffer zones or jurisdictional areas, and that the boundary of the wetland resource area will be reviewed by a peer review consultant, because even just looking at aerials, I think I saw a little discrepancy on some of them, maybe being a little bit closer to existing parking lots than currently proposed. So didn't put, it still seems like a lot of comments, but mostly just things that are basics for our NOI. I didn't, because it's really simple plans that they submit with it, so not much to them.
Thank you, Melissa. So it's a very important letter to submit, but if I can be just really cynical for a minute, Mass Housing, their only purpose is to get housing built. And I'm not aware of a single instance where they've materially requested a change in a project before issuing their site approval and endorsement letter. you know, it's important that we submit the comments. But yeah, Mass Housing, I'm not convinced they actually read them.
I will say for one, I think it was for 120, they did include a lot of comments about the applicant should be addressing the comments made by, I think, Planning Board, Concom, and Stewardship on that one. That was, it was surprising. Not to say they required it, like you said,
Right.
but that they should make efforts to address those prior
But
to
it-
approval.
But this also helps out with the, you know, the eventual correspondence with ZBA, which will probably come at some point.
Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to add or change to those? I know it's kind of lame.
Oh, no, Melissa, it looked great. I mean, given what you had to work from, I think you did a fantastic job. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay. So you're up again, Melissa?
Yes, so the last update I will give you for tonight is that on Tuesday, we got our funding for the rest of the cleanup. So everything is set. The contractor starting Monday. So very excited. All the additional approvals that we needed, you know, we completed as of, I think technically Sunday is our last presumptive approval for one of the things we needed from Mass Historical. So Monday, they are starting the improvements to the access road, erosion controls and fencing. And then Monday the 14th, which is a holiday, but they will be working. They should be starting the excavation and remedial actions. So very happy to report, now that we have the funding, the change order for the bid has been completed, just doing the final signatures between internal staff. We got contractor signatures on it. Town council already signed off on it. So we're good to go. DEP did give us a 6-month extension. That brings us out to the end of March. So that's been great. So we probably won't have full restoration the end of this year just because we're running up to winter. I think I mentioned previously, once we get started with the excavation, it'll take about 5 weeks to complete that. So we might be running into some winter type conditions, non-growing season, obviously. So they'd come back in the spring and do final stabilization then. And then we'll kind of see what we're left with. TRC, we have our LSP and our environmental engineer. They kind of need to assess what the final conditions will be like till we do a final restoration plan. So we'll see what the site looks like come, spring especially, but probably even this winter, and be able to hopefully put together a little bit more of a comprehensive restoration plan, but at least doing some temporary stabilization or cover crop in the meantime until we get there. That's it. That's all I got.
Fantastic. Great news there. Just in a tiny bit of other business, about 3 weeks ago, I spoke to the commission about the Community Preservation Committee and a citizens petition warrant article that we were sponsoring. It was Article 10 at our special town meeting. And the article was voted in favor of by town meeting. Liz, you spoke very eloquently in support of it. Thank you very much for that. It was wonderful to hear the hall support the article and the reasoning behind it. So the next steps there, the articles, once they get approved, they go to the Attorney General's office for a legal review. We don't anticipate any trouble there. They have 90 days to complete that review. Once they do, it becomes the law of the land. And I think at that point, I will be coming back to the commission and I think we will have to go through all the contributing town bodies to community preservation. We'll have to, instead of designating a preferred member, they will have to appoint a member. So that will be coming up at some point, probably a little bit into the new year. That's all I've got. There's nothing else. We just need one last motion. Would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
In a second.
Second.
Thank you.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
All right, Liz's
All
favorite
right.
motion.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks,
Okay.
guys.